No, baby, that's for somebody else. We're just gonna keep you right where you're at right now.
It doesn't matter what you think.
The Wrestling Realm presents Break It Down with Brian H.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of Break It Down with Brian H. I'm your host, Brian H. Waters. We have finally did it. We have reached 100 episodes, folks. So, before we get started, for those who do not know, make sure you follow me at Brian H. Waters. Make sure you follow the real Dwayne Allen at Dwayne Allen 24. And of course, follow the Wrestling Realm at Wrestling Realm. It's a nice occasion, so had to dress up. It's not every day somebody celebrates 100 episodes of a podcast. And I just got to say, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in, whether this is your first time or maybe it's your 100th time, or you probably out there said, look, I've watched every show, so I know that I'm counting the special editions also. So that's well over 100. But I have to say, thank you. Thank you for everybody who's joined by tweeting the show, who's tweeted at me, who's disagreed with me, who's agreed with me, who's been special guests, who never tweets at all. I know some of you out there that never tweet, never talk about it, but you tell your friends and then they tell me. So I want to say thank you as well. Then I want to thank all the people who has hit the retweet button for the show. Whether you listen to it or not, but just a retweet, putting it in somebody else's network, somebody else's timeline, because guess what? Everybody knows a wrestling fan. So I want to thank you, everybody who's doing that. I want to thank, of course, most importantly, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because if it wasn't for him, none of this would be possible. Yes, you could be a Christian and love wrestling. So with that, let's break down the decade, folks. And we're going to start off with our tag team of the decade.
Cover here by Jay, and the Usos are 5-time tag team champions. Third time did it.
And the new Smackdown Tag Team Champions, the Usos.
Hell in a Cell has become the Uso Penitentiary.
Yes, folks. To me, the tag team of the decade is the Usos. Now, I know a lot of people out there are saying, well, you know what? It should have been the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks was everywhere. They was winning and they was in 5-star matches. Some people may have said it should have been the New Day, but I simply pick the Usos because what I see right there is a tag team that I would put in with anybody, putting the best with anybody. Not too many times do you have a Hall of Famer out there that's outshadowed by his child, or in this case, children. I think when it's all said and done, that the Usos will have outshadowed Rikishi and therefore become Rikishi's greatest contribution to the wrestling business. You think about Cowboy Bob Orton, a Hall of Famer. His greatest contribution to the wrestling business was his son, Randy. And that's what I see when I see the Usos. You think about how in a company that does not focus that much on tag team wrestling, you have two guys who can go out there and put on a show, who can make tag team wrestling relevant. They found their niche. You remember when they was coming out there and they was doing the Uso crazy, and it's like, man, when are these guys gonna ever get the titles? But when they finally did it in 2014, they never looked back. You look at, excuse me, you look at when they changed over and they kind of went to the dark side, and it was the Uso Penitentiary. And this is why they're my tag team of the decade. I mean, just constantly reinventing themselves. I know they kind of been, MIA as of late, but everybody know who the Usos are. To me, the money matchup What I want to see is the Usos and the Gorillas of Destiny. I want to see that matchup one day. So yes, the Usos are my tag team of the decade. Let's move on to the most inspirational moment of the decade.
The good news is I'm in remission, y'all. So with that being said, the big dog is back!
Yes, folks, the most inspirational moment to me was simply Roman Reigns returning after his battle with leukemia. Now I want to say, I want to offer my prayers and condolences to people who are battling leukemia, and as well as the condolences to the family members who have lost people to leukemia over the past decade. So, and it's something with Roman, he was able to bring awareness by him using his WWE platform. He was able to raise money for this disease. And that's what you want. As somebody who understands, who works in research, it takes a lot of money for these doctors and researchers to, essentially fight these diseases, because they have to put the money and spend it. So, something like buying a t-shirt or buying the wristbands. I have one around here. That's helping towards this. And it's a joint effort. So a guy like Roman Reigns using his platform, it was a huge deal. And for him to be able to come back into professional wrestling gave hope that perhaps whatever they was able to use on him, whatever testing or however they treated Roman, perhaps they could treat the next guy. So that's why this is my inspirational moment. And, and just if I could add this part from the wrestling point, we saw Roman come back and he's never been treated the way he was before, which is pretty cool. People didn't start booing him the way they used to. It's hard to believe almost. So, Roman Reigns gets the most inspirational moment of the decade. And now it's time for the most shocking.
But Vince McMahon's going to make money to spite himself. He's a millionaire who should be a billionaire. You know why he's not a billionaire? It's because he surrounds himself with glad-handing, nonsensical yes men like John Laurinaitis, who's going to tell him everything that he wants to hear. And I'd like to think that maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon's dead. But the fact is, it's going to get taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law and the rest of his stupid family.
Are you really surprised? Are you? CM Punk dropping a pipe bomb that Monday night in that old soul year of 2011 in the month of June. I remember watching it live, and when it went off, it sent a shockwave through the internet. Because the first thing people said was, I don't think that was supposed to happen. I remember picking up the phone as soon as it happened. I called the real Dwayne Allen. And I said, yo, bro, did you just hear what he said? And he was like, man, he mentioned John Laurinaitis' name on television. Like, you don't mention his name on TV. And now that seems crazy because, afterwards Laurinaitis was involved in so many storylines. But at that time, you did not mention his name. So I watched this and I was just like, wow. And it's still something people talk about to this day. The microphone isn't a microphone. It's a pipe bomb. It's, when somebody says something, he just dropped a pipe bomb. It single-handedly, it just shocked everybody. Yes, Seth Rollins hitting the Dean Ambrose with the chair was a shock. Yes, Mark Henry faking his retirement was a shock. But nothing was more shocking than a pipe bomb that happened in June of 2011. And quite frankly, single-handedly made CM Punk into a bigger star. Yes, he had his following, But you gotta look at it like this, folks. This guy became a bigger star after that, because then people's like, oh man, the CM Punk chants rage throughout the arenas. And then you move on to now, even once he left the wrestling business, people still chant CM Punk. But it all started right there with the most shocking moment in wrestling of the wrestling decade. Hey guys, if you've been paying attention, you may know that the Wrestling Realm is now available on Spotify. So not only are we on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube, but we are also on Spotify. So make sure you subscribe and do not miss an episode of the Wrestling Realm or Break It Down with Brian H. Now it's time for the moment, the overall moment of the past 10 years.
And the champion, Paradise! Kofi did it! Kofi did it! Kofi did it! Kofi is champion! Here is your winner, and the new WWE champion, Kofi Kingston! 11 years! 11 long years!
Yes. What a moment that was. Kofi Kingston becoming the brand new WWE champion right in the middle of WrestleMania 35. To watch that, for me personally, to sit there and watch that with my children, my uncle who got me into wrestling, my father who funded a lot of my wrestling habits, my co-host who co-founded the Wrestling Realm with me, my cousin Hypno Beats who made the track for this for this show, my friend Blake who introduced me into the wrestling business backstage as far as the social media aspect. To watch that moment with all these people, as we all men of color, to see Kofi Kingston become the new WWE champion, a guy who we never thought would win that title. I mean, it was just an epic moment. Then you take a look at what happened afterwards. His travel to Africa and seeing the people pretty much roll out the red carpet, showing how much of an inspiration he was to them, showing how much of an inspiration he was to those children. The tour beforehand, the Hot 97s, the Breakfast Clubs, or maybe it wasn't on the Breakfast Club, but all over. And when he finally did it, to see the tears of joy and then to see the reactions in the crowd, I mean, it was just, to me, no bigger moment of the 2010s than Kofi Kingston becoming your new WWE champion. So, man, what a moment that was. I mean, not gonna lie, it had a tear in my eye. But let's move on. It's time for the Raw moment of the decade.
If I beat you at WrestleMania 30, I get added to the WWE World Heavyweight Championship match, so that then the main event would be Randy Orton versus Batista versus Daniel Bryan.
And triple threat match. What?
Occupy Raw. Daniel Bryan just absolutely having the entire crowd in his hand. So to really understand why this was the Raw moment of the decade, if you was not watching wrestling in 2014, you might not get it. So let me take you back. The moment we really began, it started around July 2013. Daniel Bryan's getting hotter than ever before. People all over the place are loving him. the Yes movement, which began in Miami in 2012 when he lost the title. When he lost the World Heavyweight Championship in 8 seconds or 18 seconds, it started, but it really captivated the audience. And to a point, he had a match with John Cena. And when he lost, well, he beat Cena clean, which was sort of unheard of. Beat Cena clean. Becomes the new WWE champion. Suddenly, Randy Orton teases a cash-in of his Money in the Bank contract he won the month before. Triple H hits him with the pedigree, sets up. Now we have this authority because Daniel Bryan's being constantly told he's not good enough. Now they say, because Bryan will win the title back only because it was a fast count. He had to relinquish it. And they said, like, okay, gave you what you want, now we're going to cool him down. But the people was not having that. He went to the Royal Rumble. I mean, and was in a match, but he was not in the Rumble match, to the point the fans in Philadelphia, no, it wasn't Philly, wherever it was, they hijacked the show. After hijacking the show, Bryan would go ahead and, he was never in the Royal Rumble, and fans were just upset. Batista wins, and Batista made his return the Monday before, and then he won the Royal Rumble. Fans didn't like it, to the point there was a change.org to get Daniel Bryan in the main event of WrestleMania. And this was one of those moments where fans wasn't having it. Me, for one, this got me blocked by Batista on Twitter. And then it led to Daniel Bryan eventually getting his way. But the Occupy Raw moment, when he and hundreds of people stood in the ring and wouldn't allow the show to go on until he got what he wanted, and that was a match with Triple H for the opportunity to win the WWE Championship, which he would do at WrestleMania 30. But the Raw moment, folks, was the Occupy Raw moment, because this is what got us to where we are right here. The Occupy Raw moment was just amazing. It was on the level of the Stone Cold beer truck, the Kurt Angle milk truck, all that. You throw Occupy Raw moment of the decade. Now it's time for the Smackdown Live moment of the decade.
Phenomenal!
He hit it! He hit it!
Styles has done it again!
Smackdown Live is the house that AJ Styles built.
Now, I ain't gonna lie, folks. I had a tough time with this one. I was looking at, maybe Daniel Bryan announcing his return. But I was like, nah, it's too much Daniel Bryan in the show. But then again, it's not just that. Like, was it really? But maybe that's just me. Then I looked and I thought about it. AJ Styles winning the title overseas, something that had not been done in years. I think the time before that was when Bret the Hitman Hart won the WWE Championship in Saskatoon, Canada. That's winning the championship not on American soil. And I mean, it was a great moment, because you go back and you see AJ Styles connect with a fan who had been there, who had been following him throughout his career in Impact Wrestling. And I said, wow, you know what? Yes, I agree. This is the moment of the decade for SmackDown. It's no shame. SmackDown Live, just, the best are yet to come. I think when you think about SmackDown, the 2010s were nowhere near as good as the 2000 to 2009, right? With that, you had The Undertaker, you had Kurt Angle. So the 2010s, for a while, it was the B show, and it was kind of just looked at as the B show. Then you had that period where you had both wrestlers on there. Then you split it up again. But this was a moment right here. And AJ Styles, I mean, he really just was the house that, SmackDown really became the house that AJ Styles built. So I think this is important because he kind of resurrected the brand and made it must-see TV. So now we went from the moments. It's now time to get into the event of the decade.
The future is now.
Now, I know a lot of people thought that it would be a WrestleMania. I mean, after all, I'm a WrestleMania guru. Wish I could go every year. It doesn't always happen that way. But it's my favorite pay-per-view. But I really thought about this one. And I said, you know what? To me, it's the first TakeOver Brooklyn. The first one that they were on the road. But this was a night, when you think about TakeOver Brooklyn, it's two matches you think about. And that's Sasha Bailey, which stole the show. But you also look at Finn Balor and Kevin Owens. And a lot of people will tell you, yeah, but Balor and Owens couldn't measure up because Sasha and Bailey took the crowd. Go back and watch the match. That was a really good match, though. But, I mean, also in the show, you had Blake and Murphy defending their tag titles against the Vaudevillains. Shout out to my homie, Leva Bates, or she now the Librarian, but that's where Blue Pants made an appearance. You had Jushin Thunder Liger on this show, on Tyler Breeze. Also Apollo Crews taking on Ty Dillinger. But just this main event, like the ladder match between Balor and Owens. Go back and watch that match because it was a good match. But there's no doubt about it. Sasha and Bailey stole the show. I mean, this was the match where Bailey finally won the NXT Women's Championship and was anointed as, this was her torch. Because Sasha was moving on. But I really enjoyed this match. But I've just really enjoyed this show. This is where, and yeah, there have been other takeovers, but to me, this was the takeover of the decade because when you think about it, you cannot have a conversation without this one. When you think about takeovers, when you think about a pay-per-view or an event, whatever you want to call it, you want it to be like this, where people are going to be talking about it forever. This is dead smack in the middle of the decade, 2015, and I mean, this was just one hell of a night. One hell of a night, So I definitely, I definitely recommend, if you haven't watched this one, go check it out. I promise you, I can guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. So now we getting into the controversy. We got 2 more awards to go. And I want to see, because I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers around here. Let's start with the Women's Wrestler of the Decade.
The Queen pulling her on the... Oh my God! Asuka tails! The streak of Asuka is over! Here is your winner, and still the Smackdown Women's Champion, Charlotte Flair! Absolutely incredible! Charlotte Flair may be the underdog tonight, fighting through adversity, her iron will, snapping the fabled streak of the Empress of Tomorrow, Asuka forced to bow down to the Queen.
Woo! Yes, I had to do it. I had to, folks. To me, it's Charlotte Flair. I mean, you're looking at one of the greatest women to ever do it, and she's not even done yet. Trish Stratus passed the torch on to her at SummerSlam, but Charlotte was able to come into NXT. Really, she came in, Ric Flair's daughter, but she would tell you that Arn Anderson was harder on her because of that. That's his niece, you know, not legally, but you know, Flair and AR and the Horsemen. Coming able to do something that's hard to do. Step out of the shadow of her father. That's not easy. I was just talking about earlier with the Usos. As good as Rikishi was, as polarizing of a character he was, the Usos are able to make a name for themselves. Same with Randy Orton, same with Charlotte Flair. Charlotte said, or Rick said, that he waits for the day when people are going to say, oh, that's Charlotte's dad. And you know what? Some people may think that's impossible, but no. Think about this generation. Now, granted, Ric Flair stays relevant with pop culture, but, I mean, Charlotte goes out there and just puts on 5-star match after 5-star match. I mean, she was in Hell in the first ever women's Hell in a Cell. I believe she's been in a TLC match. Just absolutely just the best, you know. Main eventing a pay-per-view, main eventing WrestleMania. And you go back and watch WrestleMania 35, and you may say, oh, the main event flop. Not necessarily. It's just a long show. But without Charlotte, that match is not as good as what it was. That's my opinion. So, yeah, it's about the championships. And I know it's not a shoot, but still, it's about the championships. It's about the accomplishments. ESPN magazine. She's all over doing these media rounds. Charlotte is in demand. She's must-see TV, and that's why she is the women's wrestler of the decade. And now it's time for the match of the decade, folks.
About to kick his head off, and now, he's gonna go for it. He's got him up. Oh, my God, he got it. Hook the leg, 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 hook the leg. Oh my God.
Oh boy, yeah, this was tough. And I know now you guys can say it. You can stop saying it. Everything's WWE, whatever. Look, it's my list. You know, I invite everybody to share their list. I will talk about it. I will reply with it on the next episode 101. But the match of the decade did not take place in the WWE. It took place in Japan, and it is Okada versus Omega at New Japan Dominion 2018. I mean, that's 60 plus minutes of my life that I will not get back, and I am not complaining. An incredible match, a match that did not feel like you were sitting there that long. I mean, back and forth. Some people say it's the greatest match they've ever seen. I've seen too many matches. I can't make that statement, but I can tell you this was certainly the match of the decade. It's one people are going to be talking about for years to come. It's where Omega was finally able to win the big one. And I mean, just what a great match these two put on. Go find it. That's all I got to say. Go find it. Watch it. I've watched it more than once. And there were some other great matches, but this one right here is what you call a match for the ages. Therefore, it's the match of the decade. And now, the men's wrestler of the decade, folks, is none other than...
Can it be? It is! The phenomenal one is here! AJ Styles! Oh my gosh! It has been rumored for weeks that the hottest free agent in sports entertainment was heading to WWE. Styles is here.
Former IWGP champion, same as Brock Lesnar.
Oh yeah, the phenomenal one himself, AJ Styles. AJ Styles has been just doing it. I mean, IWGP champion, Impact heavyweight champion, WWE champion. He just made his rounds and was the hottest, most sought out free agent. There's times when there's players in wrestling, and I can imagine that if there was the Attitude Era, if there was social media during the Attitude Era, the conversations would have been something like, when is Sting coming to the WWE? When is Sting coming to the WWE, right? Back in the 80s, when is Flair coming to the WWE? Well, the conversation for a long time was, when is AJ Styles coming to the WWE? Then there was the conversation of, they're not going to use him, right? He's small. They're not going to let him get going. All this stuff. So much. And not only does he come to the WWE, but he comes and excels. He headline, you could say headline, co-headline. To me, you know what? Co-headline WrestleMania 34. Him and Shinsuke Nakamura. AJ Styles went in and left as the WWE champion. He was the United States champion. He currently is the United. No, he's not. He just overall just one of the best to ever do it. And the night he made his debut at the Royal Rumble, it sent shockwaves. Everybody was happy. Yeah, sometimes or you have an idea, but when it finally happens, internet breaking moment. I mean, this guy came into the WWE and didn't miss a beat. And this was a guy who was in TNA. Yeah, he was their champion, but it's like, man, is AJ Styles really going to be able to do what he do in the WWE? They ain't going to let him do that. And now look at him, folks. He's one of the top players for the top companies. And that's why when it comes down to it, AJ Styles, to me, beat John Cena. He beat Randy Orton for the wrestler of the decade. Well, folks, thank you. Like I said, I mean, it's just an honor and a pleasure to be able to sit here, talk wrestling, and share it with people I've never met before, people whose hands I've never shook before. Some people I have met, but to be able to share my thoughts and for you to engage with me about the wrestling business, I really appreciate it. And as promised, it's time for the big announcement. Here it is. Glass ceiling. The top definition on Urban Dictionary is a wrestling term symbolizing the barricade keeping the perennial upper mid-carders from main events. Usually used in the sense of backstage politics in wrestling, with one wrestler being accused of holding another one down. Well, guess what? There's backstage politics that occur everywhere. And in this case, in this podcast, I'm going to talk about how we break through the glass ceilings. But here's the surprise. This will not be a wrestling podcast. B. Waters Productions enters the podcast industry. Not only a media company that can produce your videos, social media graphics, but now Brian H. Waters shares his network with the world.
I think we all have those moments that we remember everything that happened in that moment in time. So that's kind of when my show became truly a national brand, and still to this day, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, you interview LeVar Ball." It doesn't matter.
The moment where I broke the glass was when I went to my first convention in Detroit. That was my first time being in a room just surrounded by a whole bunch of Black media professionals that were doing the same things that I aspired to do.
I will not only give you my story, but I'll give you the story of some of my close friends and associates and some new people I meet along the way. So get ready, as before we close out 2019, I introduce you to my brand new podcast, Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Brian H. Waters. Yes, folks. Brian H. Waters Company, B. Waters Productions, officially will announce a brand new podcast titled Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Brian H. I'm excited to announce that, folks. I've been blessed with a network of people, and some watch wrestling, some don't. I have a whole other network that talk to and deal with as far as, my NABJ colleagues. Shout out to them who always retweeting the show. Well, now you're going to get to meet some of them, as I will invite you over to, once you finish listening to Break It Down with Brian H., you can check that out. The show will air every Monday, so get ready, as I already have a few episodes in the books this Monday. Make sure you listen, as you will be able to check out my story, where I discuss my journey at Johns Hopkins from the storeroom to the boardroom. So that's one, and there's a couple more episodes. I listen to that one, you'll find out. But yeah, I'm excited to share that. I'm excited to be able to introduce the world to my network, essentially. And, there'll be some people who are in the wrestling circle who will be on that podcast as well, as they will talk about how they put together their wrestling podcast. So stay tuned. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. Make sure you are subscribed to us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Anchor, on Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. You name it, we are there. Make sure you let me know. The show will get back to its regular format at this weekend for episode 101, where I will discuss Raw, Smackdown, AEW, and NXT. So it'll be a heavy show, but I wanted this one to focus on breaking down the decade. This will be, a timeless show, as opposed to other ones are usually timely. But until the next time, folks, shout out to my boy Hypnosis, my little cousin on the beat. So long, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Break It Down with Brian H. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you get notified every time the Wrestling Realm posts new content.